So we have a wonderful panel up here to discuss the film, and a reminder that after this, there's going to be a raffle and an auction hosted by Jackie Beat. So stick around. First, I would love to introduce part of the ensemble, Doug Cox and Terry Bolo. Doug was Mr. Tuxedo shirt, and Terry was the very nice lady who was so sweet to Carrie. Come on out. Next, we have a legend of cinema who has been in Halloween, Rock and Roll High School, Stripes, PJ Souls. Please come out. It is such a treat to be here tonight with Paul Hirsch, the editor of CARRIE, Star Wars, The Empire Strikes Back, Blowout, a living cinema legend. Thank you so much for being here, Mr. Hirsch. The hostess of this evening, who has had many collaborations with Brian De Palma, and we know her from so many films. She is as sweet as Chris is horrible. Please bring out Nancy Allen. Our next panelist needs no introduction, but I need you to say it. Eve was weak. Say it.
Eve was weak.
Eve was weak. Say it.
Eve was weak.
The mother of them all, Piper Laurie. You got a standing O. What a treat to be up on this stage with these three lovely ladies in particular who have defined my cinema in the 70s and 80s. What a wonderful experience to be up here with PJ, Nancy, and Piper. It's really fantastic. I'm going to direct the first question at Doug and Terry, because so much about the casting experience on this show was about the ensemble, and one of the questions that I've always had about this movie is, were you really laughing, or was it all in Carrie's head?
I think that because kids can be mean, I think a lot of the kids were really laughing at Carrie. But for my personal choice in the film, I was trying to fit in with the crowd, but I really felt sorry for her. So I was really, really happy for real at the prom.
I went along with the others and laughed.
You
I'm
deserved
sorry.
what you got.
I'm so sorry.
So PJ, this came out before Halloween.
Oh, yeah. Oh, definitely. Way before.
And what was the difference in the years of filming it? How far away were they from each other?
75 and 76 to 77, 78. Yeah, so 2-3 years. Yeah.
And the prom sequence at the end was pretty hellish to film as well as it was to see for the audience. And you had a particular experience with that hose.
Yes, the hose got very intimate with my ear. It broke my eardrum, the force of the water, but It was very painful, and that last little wince was really pain, and I think I just blacked out because of the pain. I think when you rupture your eardrum, you lose your equilibrium, and I just kind of slithered down the bleachers, and I remember the grips came running and lifted me up and brought me to my dressing room, and then I went to Brotman Hospital, so a strange experience, but, you know, it worked.
It certainly did. Now, Paul and Nancy, you're both have collaborated with Bryan on multiple films, and we all know that Brian De Palma is a serious storyboarder. So in the editing process of this film, how much of that did it influence your work going into the picture, or did you keep the storyboards on the set?
Honestly, Brian would bring me his storyboards that he had drawn himself. They're not like storyboards as we know them today. So he would show me these drawings that he made, and I couldn't make head or tail of them. And I'd say, that looks great, Brian, that looks great. And then I would just react to the footage. But, you know, watching the film tonight, the first time I've seen it in 40 years. And, because, you know, when you get to the end of a film, you've seen it so many times, you never want to see it again. Which is the bargain, the Faustian bargain that editors make. But watching it tonight, I was struck by how interestingly every scene was shot. The angles, the lighting, and nothing was done conventionally. Every choice was very interesting and with a point and an attitude. And I thought the scenes between Nancy and John were so rich in chemistry, and you could really feel the feeling between them, the dance of the eyes, as they say, you know. And then the scenes between Piper and Sissy were like operatic duets. They were just fabulous. I just had a great time watching the picture tonight.
It's beautifully edited. Speaking of Nancy and John Travolta, you have such a strange relationship with him in this film as in other films, and it has this BDSM sort of quality to it. So you're kind of John Travolta's first cinematic dom.
And I'm proud of it.
Can you talk a little bit about filming that scene? Because it's interesting to watch it with a modern audience where he's slapping you, you slap him, you have a very physically abusive relationship. And on screen, then you look at your chemistry in Blowout, which is such a different dynamic. What was it like doing those two Blowout, people? I mean, let's come on. Also edited by Paul Hirsch.
Well, first of all, John and I had a ball in the movie, and we really did have tremendous chemistry together, and he's a lot of fun to work with. He's a very funny guy. But the scene in the car, as you know, I was slapped earlier by Betty Buckley, and she was really slapping me a lot. And John was so sweet. I mean, he would barely touch me with his hands. And the fact that I was so bitchy with him. In the original storyboards, when Brian showed me before we shot the film, he was supposed to rip my shirt off in the scene in the car, and he said, yeah, that would not work with her. We're not going to shoot that. She'll kill him if he does that. So, you know, we also thought we were the comic relief in the movie. We had no idea everyone was going to hate us because the crew laughed at us so much. But, so, you know, we had a great time on that, and when we came together in Blowout, it was so very different. He had had tremendous success in Saturday Night Fever and Grease, and I hadn't seen him in a long time, and I had no idea if he had changed or what he was going to be like. But, you know, when he walked in for rehearsals, he said, hey, let's order a pizza. We ordered a pizza. We started working and started to do some improvisation together to make the script work for us, because it was very, very different. And it was, you know, to me, it was always magical working with him because you never knew what he was going to do.
Well, of the comic relief perception of the film, Piper, you were the comic relief of the film, and you thought you assumed that the role was a comedic one, but you played it so emotionally authentic, which I guess is the basis of brilliant comedy.
Well, I read the script and I thought it was a comedy. And first I really didn't like the script. And then my husband said, well, you know, Bryan De Palma has a comedic approach to everything he does. I said, I've misread the whole thing. It's a comedy. And on the basis of that, I took the train into New York and I met with Bryan and we liked each other. And months later, I was back in Los Angeles rehearsing in his apartment with all the pictures, the storyboard around. And I had worked out a couple of, I thought, really funny bits to do, physical stuff. And I went through one scene with Sissy, and I did it again. And he said, Piper, you're not going to be able to do that. You're going to get a laugh. And I was stunned, and he was serious, and I realized then that, you know, we were supposed to be serious. But I fought against a lot of things that were in the original story, and I don't remember exactly how you put it before we said that he dodged the bullets.
Right. Yeah.
And in a way, I was trying to do that too with my character. So,
You were as limber as Neo up there dodging those bullets in this beautiful, beautiful performance. And the wardrobe was hilarious too. The first time we see her, she's in a cape, for God's sakes. So it was a fascinating portrayal. Did you have anything input on the wardrobe?
the white gown that I wore at the end was a copy of a blouse I had brought down from Woodstock, where I've been living for years. And the wardrobe person said, oh, I love that. And so she just made it longer, and that was the gown I wore.
It was such a striking introduction to a character, and all of your you had so many wonderful Christian gestures. That now, what part made you think it was a comedy? Was it because she was such an over-the-top Christian, or
well,
was
when I first read it, I didn't think so. But that when my ex-husband put that into my head, I said, oh, it's a satiric thing, No, I just thought, well, that made sense to me to play those things that were that I didn't believe in the original story, that I thought were, and I was tired of it.
Right.
Tired of seeing that sort of stuff. So I just wanted to do something fresh.
And you did. You did. So Nancy, with CARRIE and Dressed to Kill, which is another favorite film of mine, you really carved out a wonderful niche as a certain kind of anti-hero heroine. What was that like to be representative of not only mean girls, but prostitutes, savvy prostitutes in Bryan De Palma's world?
Well, it's wonderful to be able to live a fantasy but not have to pay the consequences for it. It was really thrilling, quite honestly. How often do you get a chance to play a role like that? And I always know when I read something and I get really excited about it and think, oh my God, I can't do it, that it's going to be a challenge and fun. But I did learn that it's a lot safer to be naked in a movie than to wear black lingerie. If you're naked, they're really nice to you. If you're wearing black lingerie, all bets are off.
Look out behind you. One of my favorite tweets over the last election debates was Jackie Beats of Michael Caine sneaking up behind you, juxtaposed with Donald Trump sneaking up behind Hillary Clinton.
Yes,
And I think that sums it up.
Brilliant.
So with the suspense that Bryan De Palma builds in his films, it really is a fascinating articulation of the entire ensemble, from editor to what's happening on the stage and performances. Paul, can you talk a little bit about what it is like to build suspense with a master of suspense?
That would be boring, wouldn't it?
Well, it depends on your answer.
Well, I was struck tonight, again, seeing this, it was so fresh for me. I was struck by how much the performances were inherent in the material. They weren't necessarily constructed in the editing room. There were long oneers where the whole scene was played out in one shot. The shot in the prom starts on Tommy and Carrie, goes all the way through collecting the ballads and switching the ballads and then establishing the geography of Nancy and John under the stage and Amy behind the stage, and then the bucket of blood, and then it ends up all in one shot, ends up back on Tommy and Carrie as they announce the winner. So that's an extraordinary shot. It was fun to watch that. And then, of course, the dance shot, the spinning shot, and the actors played it beautifully, and there's no cutting in any of those, you know. The suspense, generally, the tension comes from a sense that there's pressure on the characters, and the pressure on the characters can come from a variety of things, depending on how it's set up, you know. In Mission Impossible, when Cruise is hanging in the CIA, he can't let the temperature in the room get too high, he can't make any noise, he can't let anything hit the floor, and then the guy who's in the room is going to come back any minute. So all these elements of pressure on the character create the tension. And very often, the tension comes from a sense that time is running out, that there's a limit to that kind of pressure, that, you know, your days are numbered, your minutes are numbered, your seconds are numbered, you know.
Well, it's precise editing, and it is wonderful, wonderful work.
Thank you.
Now, PJ, oh, sorry.
I just want to say, every time I see the prom scene, I'm just overwhelmed with what a magnificent sequence that is. It's so, well, I was thinking about, I found the words, but now they're gone. But it's an extraordinary accomplishment, the way that builds, and it's so romantic and so just perfect.
Well, you care so much about the characters, and actually the build-up to the dumping of the blood, that slow motion sequence, I think the whole prom scene took weeks to shoot, and that slow motion sequence has more than 100 setups of each of the characters and what they're seeing and how they react to what they're seeing, and it was, you know, it was a challenge to get all the pieces to fit in the right order and at the right time, and it's very satisfying to see it today.
It was wonderful to see in a 4K presentation as well, and picking up details that I hadn't noticed before.
Yeah, it looked beautiful.
The meteorites that were coming through the roof. You know, in the novel Carrie, as a little girl, Carrie was able to summon meteorites from the sky, and the collapse of the house, you could see meteorites more specifically where it was the first time I had read about that there was meteorites involved in the collapse of the house, but I had never seen them before tonight.
Right. They actually filmed an opening scene of Carrie as a little girl, and she's looking at her neighbor who's sunbathing, and Carrie says, "I can see your dirty pillows." And the girl says, "What?" And she says, "Your dirty pillows." And then you hear Margaret calling her from the house, and she gets frightened, and she runs inside, and gravel falls out of the sky onto the roof. So at the end of the movie, when the house collapses, it was meant to be a callback to the opening scene. But the opening scene didn't work for a number of reasons, and we cut it. And I think opening on the volleyball game is a great way to start the picture. But inadvertently, we already had shot the interior of the house before we cut the opening scene, so nobody's ever questioned why there are stones coming through the ceiling. But
Carrie was summoning them from the sky.
exactly.
Now, starting with the volleyball sequence was a really interesting choice, because what I loved about that is that it set up all the ladies at school and the mean girls. So, PJ, can you talk a little bit about the casting of the ensemble? Because so many wonderful actresses that are in that mean girl group we've seen after Carrie and have followed their careers, and it was wonderful to see how you integrated into that group, and also the friendship with Chris which I get today between you and Nancy. I sense a wonderful friendship that has
Oh,
lasted.
yes, absolutely. We became friends
love each other.
instantly. Yes, we do. Well, I think that was the first day of shooting the volleyball scene, and that was actually my only scene that I had. I actually screen tested for Chris's part. The scene in the truck was the screen test scene, so I had studied with John for that, and then I got the part of Norma, which I was told was only just had that one line, "Thanks a lot, Carrie." But after Bryan saw the dailies, to which he invited us all to, which was very unusual at the time for a director to say, "Come on, let's go watch the dailies." We're like, "Really?" Usually they don't want us around. But so it was because of the fact I think that I wore the red baseball hat, which again was Bryan's suggestion that I wear it, and my pin when I hit her over the head and the pin got stuck in her hair and I ripped it out and I felt so badly, but in dailies it read so great and Bryan just loved it and he said, I'm calling your agent and we're going to put you on for the rest of the shoot and you'll be Chris's best friend. And I was thrilled that I'd heard Sissy, but I got to be on for the whole movie. And I remember going up to Sissy and apologizing and saying, "I'm so sorry." She goes, "Oh no, it worked. It's going to look great. Trust me, it's going to be great." So the camaraderie, I think, from that day forward, from the beginning, was instant. We all, were very friendly. I remember Sissy, told us all that she really wasn't going to hang around a lot with us because she wanted to feel ostracized by us and didn't want to, have the look in our eyes that we really cared about her. So I think, that was a very wise decision that she didn't hang out with us. But I don't really know about the rest of the casting, but that was the casting for me. And I remember the storyboards in Bryan's apartment. They were all over his dining room walls, and I thought, wow, this is how you make a movie? You draw it first?
Yes.
I had no idea.
Was there a lot of improvisation amongst the cast for the film?
Oh, I think certainly my part, just the little bit of, "Hey, I'm your best friend." I remember that was right before lunch, and Bryan said, come on, we'll just do this. Tell her, I don't know, you're her best friend and you're trying to get the secret out of her. She knows something. And I remember he had a sour face, and I said, "What?" He says, if you don't get it in the first take, we're not going to do it. We're not going to. I'm like, "Oh my God, Nancy, we've got to make this work." That was like, and I love it. It's such a cute, it's a necessary scene too, I think, So.
And the scene right before you go out for the calisthenics, that was a wonderful bit of improvisation as well.
Also, when I watch the movie again, like tonight, I'm reminded of how generous Bryan was to kind of throw me in. He threw me into the scene of the office, getting the attendance sheets, and that, he didn't have to do that. And Betty Buckley saying, "Wipe that smirk off your face, Norma." There really wasn't a Norma in the script, but she did that because I was the one that Bryan asked to pick her up at the Chateau Marmont at 6 o'clock in the morning in my blue pickup truck and drive her to the set because she was from New York and she didn't have a driver's license. So I drove her, and 6 o'clock in the morning, she pulls down the visor every morning and she starts putting on mascara. And I'm like, "What are you doing?" And she says, "Well, Bryan's going to be there." I said, "What? You're going to go in makeup as soon as we get there." She says, "Oh, I can't be without makeup." So anyway, so that was very sweet. These little bits that sort of enhanced Norma, and of course the red baseball hat on top of the hairdryer that I did to see if Bryan would notice, and he did.
Now, Doug, how much of the tuxedo shopping sequence was improvised?
That was totally improvised. I'd been wrapped from the film, and a couple of weeks later, I got a call saying, "Bryan's come up with an idea for a scene. Are you available?" And I said, "Yeah." And that's what it turned out to be, the tuxedo shop.
Now, Mr. Hirsch, in the middle of that tuxedo shop scene, you just fast forwarded for a while. Were you like, "Let's get this moving along," or was that what sort of choice was that?
Well, it was an interesting problem because the scene was constructed on jump cuts, and the middle segment was too long. And I didn't want to throw in another jump cut because the jump cuts were, I was saving them for more significant moments. So
Like when
I
you
had
blow
seen,
up a car.
Excuse me?
Like when you blow up a car.
No. I mean, in that scene, there were two very definite time cuts. I didn't want to throw another one in the middle of one of the scenes, so there's 3 little scenes. So I had seen this film directed by Agnes Varda and edited by a friend of mine, Robert Dalva. And he had done that. They had this long scene. I remember 2 characters on a bed, and they just sped up. With like the boring parts, they just sped up. And I thought, well, that's a great way to shorten the scene. So I thought I'd try it, and then I think Pauline Kael called it a stupid editor trick or something.
Oh, Pauline.
So you win some and you lose some, but it worked to preserve the pace of the scene and not have to throw in a jump cut where I didn't want one.
Well, after the opening volleyball scene, there is the most infamous scene of Carrie, which is the shower of not only water but women's hygiene products. I would imagine where we are right now with a heightened sense of bullying in the country and in certain political campaigns. Watching the film now seems, particularly with everything that's happening with women's issues and attacks on women, and it felt very raw. How was it to film that?
Well, you know, poor Sissy was in that shower for 6 hours before we all got in there. And we were all a little tentative at first, but what happens is that this once you start this chanting thing, it's almost a mob mentality, and we just really all went a little bit crazy. And you lose yourself. And everybody was pretty shaken up after it, but you can see how that kind of, you know, you take that powerful character, the one character, Chris, as opposed, like somebody that we know who's running around now, who just starts the conversation and starts to push it, and, you know, the followers just go for it. So it is really scary. This is scarier. What's going on now is very much scarier than Carrie.
Yes,
Let's be honest.
It very much is. And it does speak volumes about how far we've come as a country, too, because when Carrie came out in 1976, we didn't have Columbine yet. No. So, as evidenced by some of the reactions to the film tonight, people were enjoying the comedy when it struck because it was hard to deny because the cruelty was so absurd, you had to laugh at it. And then we have these tragedies that are happening so often in schools. This was kind of a benchmark in cinematic awareness of bullying. How does it feel watching the film now, given where we are as a country?
Well, I felt that all the girls were trying to go along with the crowd. They wanted to be in Chris's crowd.
Like Billy Bush.
And then, like I said, I made the decision for my character that I felt really bad about it. And I think that maybe in real life some kids do, too, feel bad about it. You know, they want to belong, so they go along with the crowd, but that's not really who they really are. And so I think that it shows that, yeah, bullying, it's still out there. And, you know, it's unfortunate. And people need to be more aware when they find themselves caught up in that kind of thing.
I was really struck watching it tonight how much physical abuse there is in the movie. I mean, everybody's slapping everybody. Piper's hitting Sissy with the book, and I'm getting slapped, and you know, it really did feel a little bit creepy, you know, right now. You just think differently about it now.
It was visceral, and also a wonder of the 4K presentation tonight. I'd never seen those welts and scratches on your face as vividly as I had tonight, Piper. Were you striking yourself as well? Because those scratch marks and those welts looked real.
Yeah, I have very thin skin, you
Oh,
know, and probably when I went like this, it got red. No,
So there was no makeup applied in those scratches. That was
no.
Wow.
No.
A lot. Like, how many? Were there any fake slaps in this film, or were they all real ones?
John's slaps were fake.
Right.
Betty's were not, I promise you.
Well, we have a cast member that wanted to be here tonight and wanted to say hello, but couldn't. So we have a little video greeting with William Catt that we'd like to show you. I can hear it. I don't know what you're talking about. Can we start it over with sound? Thank you. How great was the red lights coming on during the prom scene? Thank you, Ace Hotel Theater, for that. Technical difficulties with William Catt. We'll get back to him in a moment. So with the scenes with Sissy and yourself and the mother-daughter relationship, how much bonding did you do before the filmmaking, or did you just jump into the roles?
Well, I guess we just jumped in. For me, I just jumped in. There was little time, and we would meet for rehearsals at Bryan's apartment. And Amy Irving was there for her rehearsals with Sissy, and then she'd go, and then I'd come in, and from 2 o'clock to 4 o'clock, and we'd run the scenes. There was no time for any social. As a matter of fact, I didn't meet any of the girls until about 3 years ago. No, it was all work.
Which is, that's what you do. You come in and you give an authentic performance, and it was wonderful to see. I believe that relationship. So now with are we ready for William Catt? Not yet? Somebody give me a signal.
Can I ask Paul a question?
Yeah.
How was the split screen effect decided on? Was that an editing choice, or was that Bryan's?
This was a passion of Bryan's. He had shot a film in 1969 called Dionysus in '69, which was an off-Broadway experimental theater performance. And he had filmed it with 2 cameras. One was on the performance. It was in the round in a small theater in the village, and one camera was pointed at the players and the other was pointed at the audience and the interaction. So he had the audience on one side and the performance on the other. And he was always fascinated by split screen because he thought, well, it expands your perception of what's going on. And there are certain situations where it works very well. It's not ideally suited for an action sequence because the fact that you're looking at a split screen is sort of a distancing device that keeps you from identifying with the characters the way you would when the image is full screen. It's an intellectual fascination as opposed to an emotional connection. And when he presented it to the studio, they hated it. But unfortunately, he had shot a lot of the sequence without protecting one side of the frame, so he knew he was going to use only one side of the frame. He'd have camera stands and crew standing on the other side, so we were sort of obligated. But occasionally, he would go full screen, and to the extent that we could, we restored the full screen shots wherever possible. That's why it's partly split screen and partly full screen.
But to actually edit it, you had to cut down the middle of the
No, you edit
strip of
two
film?
separate,
Oh.
you edit two
How do you
two
edit
separate
it?
pieces of film, and then they're joined together
Yeah.
in the lab.
Wow.
And that was
that's
before the
compli-
Avid,
Yeah.
so
That's when you had a
all of
razor
that
blade?
was a lot of work.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we did that with our bare hands.
He wasn't pointing and clicking with a mouse. Now William Catt.
Hey everyone. William Catt here. I'm so sorry that I can't be with you at this extraordinary event tonight, but I was scheduled to be away. But I wanted to say hello and thank Nancy Allen and all the other wonderful people who have made this event possible. I hope everyone is having a wonderful time. Just very quickly, a few notes about the film CARRIE that we did so many years ago. It was a seminal film for Brian De Palma and certainly a turning point in my career. It launched my career, and I would venture a guess that it launched the careers of many other young people at the time. My hat's off to Brian for having the courage to cast me at the time, or I should say the audacity to cast me at that point in my life when I was so full of myself. I hope everyone is having a wonderful time. God bless you all, and Nancy, and everybody else, and PJ, and Piper, and just everybody. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful night.
The greatest American hero. So one of the wonderful things about this film in its marketing was it was marketed as an exploitation film, and that the audience was seeing Carrie bloody at the prom beforehand, so the element of suspense was shifted into a Hitchcockian way where you were showing the audience the bomb under the table just by the trailers. What was the feeling making the film? Did it feel like you were making a classic, or were you work for hire? Well,
You never think you're working on a classic. All you're doing is trying to make it work. But it's interesting. Subsequent to CARRIE, I worked with George Lucas. And George made an interesting observation. He said, the most unsettling thing about CARRIE is that there's full frontal nudity in the second shot in the movie. So most directors save that for reel 9. And by showing the audience the naked body in the very beginning of the movie, you think this director might do anything. So it creates a tension that carries through every scene that follows.
I think we all thought we were making a good movie and had a lot of fun doing it, but I don't think, well, mostly we were really glad to be working and making about $600 a week and acting.
$625.
But I don't think you can even imagine.
$625.
I think it was $604, but anyway, I think Piper got a little bit more than we did, but anyway.
And she deserved it.
In fact, I know she did. She told us later. But you know, there's no way that you can imagine that. We talked about that. We'd say, can you believe we're still talking about this movie? So it's really a trip to be part of something that has stayed and people appreciate and enjoy and laugh at and scream at. It's a great feeling.
Oh, absolutely. And speaking of the nudity, how did they come up with the opening opening credit scene in the shower room? That wasn't in the script, I don't think.
The opening credits? I don't know, but Paul is always feeling. Paul feels really. Well, you should tell your story, Paul.
Well, my credit appears at the same time as Nancy appears naked. And a lot of people have said to me, how come your name isn't on the movie? I learned a lesson right there.
We're bonded for life.
And what did you do with the outtakes from the shower scene?
Good question.
That moment is in, I think it's in the 40-Year-Old Virgin, isn't it? It's one of those.
Well, actually, it's in Knocked Up, and I've
Knocked
gotten
Up,
paid
right.
a lot of money for that one little scene. It paid very well.
I think my name is on the screen along with you.
If I'm there, you're there.
And people have said to me, did you work in some exploitation film in the 70s or something?
I can remember working on the show, and one of the crew guys was saying, "Oh, this is really going to be a piece of trash." And then I've had friends introduce me to other friends as, "Oh, this is my friend Terry. She's naked in CARRIE."
And I had a towel on because it was my first film and I didn't want my parents to see it.
And Amy cried at the last minute because she didn't want to take her bra off. So that's the truth. She was supposed to be naked too. But the thing about being naked in the shower scene is when, I don't know about you, but when Bryan talked to me, he said, well, there's going to be a lot of steam and smoke.
He
So
said
you
a
see
lot
an
of
arm
steam.
here, a leg there.
Absolutely.
And then we're all sitting in dailies going, oh my God. And I'll never forget Sissy screaming out, the slow motion of her standing there naked, slow motion, and this, she's naked, the slate comes in really slow and goes out, and she goes, nice shot, Bryan. And Betty Buckley, who wasn't even naked, was outraged after. She's, oh my God, you girls. It was supposed to be all smoky in there, and there you all are naked. It's awful.
I remember seeing it on ABC, and there was a lot of mist in that version, so maybe that's what he was referring to. Thank you all for coming out to see Carrie on the 40th anniversary with this wonderful cast and crew. It's been a pleasure. Jackie Beat is going to come up here with a raffle and an auction, and there is a signed Carrie poster that everybody's got to get their hands on. And who out there amongst us hasn't felt picked upon at some point or another? And tonight we celebrate a little bit of give back on behalf of Carrie. Thank you, everybody.
And thank you, Bryan
Thank
Fuller, for
you.
hosting a wonderful Q&A. Thank you.
Thank you for the honor.